Hello guys, welcome to my channel. So let's get on to our today's movie summary. Ki-woo Kim is a young man living in poverty in the slums of a South Korean city with his family. The family lives in a garden unit where they struggle to find a Wi-Fi signal to watch TV, get sprayed, and watch men urinating in the alley outside their house. They survive by folding pizza boxes, for which they are criticized by pizza workers for causing damage to the boxes. A wealthy acquaintance of Ki-woo pays the family a visit, and presents them with a rock that is supposed to bring wealth and prosperity. He then informs Ki-woo that he has been tutoring the wealthy family's teenage daughter. Despite the fact that he is leaving to study abroad, he is in love with his daughter, and is aware that any other university boys would take her away. Because he is confident that Ki-woo will keep an eye on her, he wants him to be her tutor, so that Min-hyuk can propose to her after she graduates from high school. Ki-woo realizes he isn't qualified since he isn't in college, yet Min-hyuk vows to vouch for him, thus he concurs, and has Ki-young produce certifications for him to take to his meeting. Ki-woo conducts an interview with the extremely wealthy Park family, where he meets Mr. Park, Mrs. Park, and their two children, a teen daughter named Dae, and a young son named Da-song. Ki-woo is aware that if he wants the job, he needs to flirt with Dae. He does, and Mrs. Park gives him a lot of money, and says they need an art tutor for Da-song. Da-song experienced a traumatic event in which he saw a ghost in the house, experienced a seizure, and required assistance with his art. Ki-woo introduces them to Ki-young, who goes by the name Jessica, and forges documents for herself. She also starts making a lot of money. In an effort to fire the Park limousine driver who takes her home, Ki-young places her underwear in the vehicle. She then suggests her uncle as the new driver, who is really Ki-taek, her father. Moon Kwang, the housekeeper, holds the final position. She has worked for the house before. The Park family lived there. The eccentric architect who owned it was her employer. To get her terminated, the Kims exploit her allergy to peaches, causing her to have allergic reactions. After that, they persuade Mrs. Park that she is extremely contagious and cannot be around their son. Mrs. Kim is hired, deceiving the Park family into hiring the entire Kim family, and she leaves devastated. When the Park family decides to leave to go camping for Da-song's birthday weekend, the Kim family takes advantage of the opportunity to stay in the enormous Park house for the weekend. The Kim family enjoys a significant increase in income. They have spent the evening drinking, eating, and cleaning up the place. Moon Kwang rings the doorbell. She asserts that she was fired so quickly that she left without receiving anything, and she simply wants it back. Moon Kwang runs into the basement and starts screaming, opening a secret passage behind some shelves, after Mrs. Kim reluctantly allows her in. She goes to her better half, Gun-se, who has secretly been living in the bunker ever since the previous owner moved out, to stay away from predatory lenders. She gives him food while Mrs. Kim looks on in horror. She tells Moon Kwang she needs to leave, as Moon Kwang begs her to let them stay. The rest of the Kim family, who had been snooping, tumbles off the steps, and they call one another father, etc., which Moon Kwang records on her phone after realizing the family's con. She threatens to send it to the Park family to compel the Kim family to comply with her and her husband's orders. They enter the secret bunker after the Kim family gains the upper hand, and Park family calls and says due to the rain they have cancelled their camping, and will return home in 8 minutes. While keeping the other two in the basement, the Kims rush to clean up as much of the mess as they can. They manage to do a good enough job that the rest of the family is able to hide while Mrs. Kim gives the Parks their dinner. When Moon Kwang breaks out and runs upstairs, Mrs. Kim shoves her back down the stairs, where she hits her head and is severely wounded. Moon Kwang and Gun-se are locked in the bunker. Mr. and Mrs. Park end up sleeping in the living room to watch Da-song, who is camping out in the backyard. This forces the Kims to stay under the table all night, while the Parks complain about Mr. Kim's smell, and then have sex later. They eventually manage to escape on their own, late at night. When they get back to their apartment, rain and sewage have completely flooded it. The rock is taken by Ki-woo, and the family spends the night in a shelter. Mrs. Park decides to throw an impromptu party for Da-song the following day. In their roles as aide, the Kim family is invited and have to pretend that they don't know that there are two people locked in a bunker under the house. Ki-woo drops the rock into the bunker where Moon Kwang died. There, he is confronted by Gun-se, who hits him over the head with a rock. After that, he goes to the party and stabs Ki-young in the chest. The party explodes in horror, and Da-song has a seizure. Gun-se was the ghost he had previously seen in the house. Mr. Park screams at his driver, Mr. Kim, who is trying to stop Ki-young's bleeding for the car keys to take his son to the hospital, and he throws the keys at him. They land under Gunsei, as he and Mrs. Kim are fighting. By stabbing him with a meat skewer, she kills him. Mr. Park gets the keys, however expresses disgust at Gunsei's smell. This triggers Mr. Kim, who snaps and stabs Mr. Park, killing him. As Mr. Kim runs away, Mrs. Park faints. After having been in a coma for several weeks, Ki-woo wakes up in the hospital. He receives probation for himself and Mrs. Kim after learning that Ki-young has passed away. Despite extensive police efforts to locate Mr. Kim in connection with Mr. Park's death, he has not been seen. Ki-woo leaves the rock in a river, and goes to the former Park house, where he sees the lights flickering. After translating the Morse code, Ki-woo finds out that Mr. Kim is in charge of them from inside the bunker, where he is now living, sneaking upstairs to get food from the new owners. Ki-woo composes his dad a letter back, settling that sometime or another he will become rich enough that he can purchase the house, and their family can be brought together.